There are plenty of people that are mad that I'm speaking up on behalf of Taylor Frankie Paul, and they're saying everything from like I'm just defending a white girl, a rich white girl, or that I am saying things because I think that she's innocent and I'm trying to absolve her of any of her wrongdoing or misbehaviors, and that all of that is factually untrue. First of all, as an Indigenous woman specifically, the last thing I want to do is hop on the internet and defend a Mormon woman. Second of all, I see Taylor Frankie Paul and I know and understand that she has her own issues to deal with. If you're new here, though, the reason why I talk about the things that I do the way that I do is because of not only my lived experience of coming out of an abusive relationship, but also because of the fact that simultaneously, I was also coming to terms and learning that a now former friend was a person who is most likely dealing with a pretty severe personality disorder. So, a lot of my prior content leading up to this has been talking about not only narcissistic abuse, but also learning to recognize when a person is most likely operating from or using behaviors that relate to a personality disorder. And that is because when you're in the presence of a person who has a personality disorder, there's so many of us who cannot believe, we cannot fathom that a person is actually oriented the way that a person is when they have a personality disorder. So we think we can communicate with them. We think that we can establish boundaries. We think we can reason with them. And what ends up happening is we get burned. So, no, I'm not up here saying any of the things that I'm saying because I think that Taylor Frankie Paul is innocent, nor do I think that she shouldn't be held accountable for anything. However, what I do know and understand, and the reason why I talk about the things the way that I do, is because I know that two things can be true at the same time. I have watched my own former friend go through hundreds of her own relationships that were exactly Taylor Frankie Paul and Dakota. I've been here so many times. And it was a part of the uncovering and the learning that, oh, this is what a personality disorder looks like, acts like, talks like, walks like. And that is not to say that I am diagnosing Taylor Frankie Paul or to say that I know for a fact that she has a personality disorder. What I do try to talk about, though, is the warning signs that you might possibly be in the presence of somebody who has a personality disorder so that you can make the choice and you can realize, okay, I've seen the signs, I've seen enough to understand that things are not changing, that I can have logic and reasonable conversations with you and things either course correct or get problem solved. Basically, giving people the opportunity to learn and understand, like recognize the signs that they might possibly be in the presence of a personality disorder so that maybe they can exit before things go awry and hurt themselves. So again, I'm not saying anything that I am because I think that Taylor is innocent or that she doesn't need work on herself. What I am saying is I know that she can be who she is and have the issues that she has and still be subjected to an abusive relationship. And actually, in fact, I do believe that people who do suffer from personality disorders or who have these types of patterns of behaviors, whether it's a personality disorder or not, they often can be more vulnerable to abusive relationships. So I can understand two things can be true at the same time. But the reason why I talk about Taylor Frankie Paul's relationship the way that I do is first because Dakota is a major part of the problem. And it's because of Dakota's presence that things get so explosive. Things are not explosive except for when Dakota is there. That is a major problem. That is the first thing that needs to be problem solved. There's no question, no doubt about that. As long as Dakota is present, Taylor will never focus on herself, and Taylor will never do the work that she needs to work on herself in order to make herself and her home a healthy and safe place. The other reason why I talk about things the way that I do is because there are plenty of people who watch this platform, who come to TikTok, who don't have safe people in their life to have conversations like this about these type of things. The other reason why is because we've already seen it unfold on this app where there have been therapists who have said some really alarming things. A lot of uninformed, especially not trauma informed, and especially not trauma and abuse informed type of content or things in relation to this relationship. And if you haven't been here long term, what I have talked about is how when I was coming out of my abusive relationship, I had two different therapists. I had a regular therapist who was not a trauma specialist, and then I had a trauma specialist. And when I was trying to make a transition from one to the other, I ended up getting hurt and harmed more by the regular therapist in a way that I would have to go from their appointment and then schedule one immediately with the trauma specialist in order to undo the damage that had happened with the regular therapist. So I offer and talk about the things that I learned from a trauma specialist and through the collective learning of working through different programs with other survivors and learning about the power dynamics, etc., because there are so many people who do not have resources and do not have strong resources like what I had in relation to a trauma specialist. So there are going to be plenty of survivors who may end up with therapists who do more damage and have no one to talk about that with, or have no idea that the things that they're offering, like if somebody had sat and listened to specifically therapist Jeff and thought that that was the end all be all and the only perspective from the world of therapy, that could be highly dangerous for a survivor. But the most important thing is that I, being the person that I am, even if it were my former friend coming to me saying that she was in an abusive relationship and needed help, I would still be the person that I am and advocate for that person in whatever way I can, offer any insight that I can, because Taylor Frankie Paul she can have all of her inappropriate behaviors, all of her issues that she needs to deal with, but what I will not do is not offer my insight when I see things happening that should not be happening, especially when it comes to law enforcement and how these type of cases are handled. Because Taylor Frankie Paul might be a person who is not as vulnerable as other people because she has money, because she has family, because she has resources, but there are plenty of women who do not have that available in their lives, and yet they still need support, they still need advocacy, and those are the kind of women who can absolutely 100% lose their lives because of the injustice, because of the poor care and service towards women who are in vulnerable situations in abusive relationships.